Comes at a time when Russia is still firmly in the global spotlight. There's, of course, the probe into ties between Russia and some of the US President Donald Trump's campaign officials and into Russian meddling in the US presidential election. Add to that Russia's intervention in Syria, as well as the ongoing anti-corruption protests in the country. Let's discuss all of this now with Garry Kasparov. He's a pro-democracy activist and the author of Winter is Coming. He's also the chairman of the Human Rights Foundation and a former world chess champion. Garry Kasparov joins me from New York. Sir, thank you very much for being on the programme this evening.
Thanks for inviting me.
We've mentioned already that this is Russia's international standing, if you like, on the international stage, rather, is very important. But I want to think of this more on the domestic front and talk about the domestic political situation. Do you think this attack could have been politically motivated?
Probably yes, but it depends by whom. Because, first I want to offer my condolences and sympathy to people of Russia. But I want people just not to mix Russian people and Putin's regime. Don't offer sympathy to Putin's regime. When we condemn Putin's regime, we do not condemn Russian people. And this is the case where we should remember that, people who suffered under this attack, they live under dictatorship. And 18 years of Putin's rule have been marked by consistent terrorist attacks. From the very beginning of Putin's rise to power in 1999, this mysterious apartment bombing, and many pointed at KGB, at least as, if not a perpetuator, but at least as a part of this attack. And, it's not a paranoia, it's just an attempt to analyze, Putin's record, the record of his regime, that every time that we face such a horrible attack, somehow it was very convenient politically for Putin for his next grab for power. I don't know, what will happen tomorrow regarding search for terrorists, but I can tell you that within the next few days, we'll hear new initiatives from Putin's puppet parliament, introducing new draconian laws, banning demonstrations. Just, less than 10 days ago, Putin faced a massive demonstration, first in many years, that I think shaken his confidence, and now he has a perfect opportunity to shut down the protest before it begins. And we know that people are willing to sacrifice, security is an altar where people are willing to sacrifice their freedom, not just in Russia.
You've mentioned about what Putin might do next, what we might hear from the Kremlin. Does this attack, or does an attack like this embolden President Putin, or does it perhaps kind of portray his vulnerabilities in terms of the protests that he's facing within his country and the activists like yourself who want to see him toppled from power?
Look, he had 18 years of unbeaten record of using terrorism as an opportunity to grab more power, and I expect that he will do the same. It worked for him before, and he's not a man who is going to change the algorithm that was so successful. So I don't know exactly what they will do. But is this the start of a revolution? Do you think this is the start of a revolution? No, it's not a revolution, but it's first time we saw, and it was, quite a shock for Kremlin, a massive protest that mainly involved young people, the young generation. And definitely Kremlin was looking desperately for a counter move. And I don't know how this terrorist attack is connected to Kremlin strategy. But, while we don't know who did it, who committed this heinous crime, I know exactly who is going to benefit, and it will be Vladimir Putin.
Do you have any idea who might be behind it? Which group?
Look, even if it was a terrorist group, and so we didn't hear anything about it, I bet you that, as before, KGB definitely had enough information about the activities of these groups, because, again, it's this, for many years, while Putin was, confident about his grip on power, nothing has happened in Russia. And suddenly now, when his confidence was shaken, so we had this terrible tragedy in St. Petersburg. And by the way, Putin is also there. And let's not forget that, this terrorist attack, will be used by other leaders worldwide to justify their crackdown. And I have no doubt that President Trump will revive his rhetorics about siding up with Russia to fight international terrorism.
You're obviously speaking to us from New York at the moment. There has been very little comment so far from the White House on this atrocity, and the comment that we have had has been very specific with the wording, not necessarily sending condolences to President Putin, but rather sending condolences to the Russian people. Do you think that's a sign of the fractured relationship between the Kremlin and the White House right now?
Oh, I think it's a good sign. And I think Trump administration understands that any attempt to do something with Putin right now could be counterproductive because the investigation is going on. And I also think that today they're more preoccupied with the appointment of a new Supreme Court judge rather than with anything else in the world.
You are an activist, and I know that you're hoping to gain some power within Russia yourself, within your organization. What happens next, though? Do you think that we will see a clampdown, and what kind of clampdown would that be in terms of your activities within Russia?
Let's make it absolutely clear, I'm chairman of the Human Rights Foundation, which is based in New York, has nothing to do with Russian fight for power. There's no one is fighting Putin for power in Russia because it's a dictatorship. And I hope one day my country will be free. I'll be able to come back and maybe do something for my country. But I'm not involved in any power struggle. So all I want to see is a country to be free from Putin's dictatorship. And I'm afraid that as long as Putin stays in power, we'll see more of these terrorist attacks. And let's not forget, this is the man who whose armies committed genocidal crimes in Syria. He doesn't stop at human cost if he believes it helps him to stay in power.
But do you think it's likely, then, that the perpetrators of this crime are people in a perhaps similar situation to yourself, in that they are oppressed, suppressed at the moment from being a political entity within Russia and fighting against Putin on a political stage?
No, this is absolutely ridiculous, With all I know about protests against Putin for years, it was absolutely peaceful. We didn't even have a single broken window, not about burned cars. And every time that people feel the streets protesting against Putin, they were met by riot police, and they were arrested. Now many of them, in jail. Many of them are killed. Many, as myself, are in exile. But the protest against Putin was always peaceful, and that's why I don't think that is the people who are protesting against Putin regime want to see Russia free. They have anything to do with these crimes. More likely that those who are trying to keep Putin in power, they were behind it to make sure that they'll have another opportunity to put more pressure on Russian people.